Magical burnout. Now, this is something that all practitioners of magic will go through in some degree at some point. Now, what to do if this happens, and let's look at the reasons why this can happen. Now, I'm talking specifically here about magical burnout. There are other burnouts, such as emotional and mental burnouts, and they can actually be quite a serious medical condition. So if you feel that you're experiencing anything like that, I would suggest to get medical advice and assistance as soon as possible. Now, just before we get started, let me just get my quick plug out of the way. If you are interested in working with me, whether it's magical work or consultations or teaching, you can always get in touch with me in the email address that's in the description, or you can also go through my Etsy store if that's easier for you. So what is a burnout? Well, a lot of the common symptoms of magical burnout would be things like feeling disillusioned or disinterested with your practice, feeling extra sensitivity, but not particularly in a good way, to the practices that you're doing or the deities that you work with, feeling lost, uninspired, feeling just not motivated, almost going through the motions and not really wanting to do the work. And this is very, very common. I think that we all go through periods of this. I myself have gone through this period many times and sort of questioning, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? Now, there are lots of reasons why this can happen. For me, in some cases, it's been that I've gone too fast and not really had time to process what I've actually done and kind of just overwhelmed and mentally burnt myself out. Then we have things like external pressures, and certainly in the last 4 years, the world has changed significantly, and things like the COVID pandemic was a massive opportunity for people to concentrate on the work, but it was also an experience that was consistently negative and overwhelming for a lot of people, and that caused burnout in all aspects of life, but particularly in magical work. I think a lot of people just felt so overwhelmed that it really affected their practices. And even now, at the right at the end of 2024, the world does not feel particularly safe. There's a lot of international things going on. It feels very pressurized and very divided, pretty much more than ever in my lifetime, unfortunately. And that can really get on top of you and your work and your relationships as well. So there are a lot of factors as to why burnouts can happen, but they do happen. And another aspect could be it's just a phase that you're going through. So if we relate this to, say, the tarot cards and that journey, you could be going through what we call a tower phase, where everything is blocked and being broken away and stripped away. And that can be it is often a very, very painful process for people to go through. And that can sort of pull you back from being able to do this work effectively, because you need to concentrate on other areas during that period. So there are many, many different reasons why this can happen. These are just sort of some of the common symptoms and reasons why it does happen. But the fact is, it happens pretty much to every single person. From my experience, everyone I've worked with in this field has gone through this period of self-reflection, questioning, not really being able to make progress. And taking that backward step is really what's needed at this point. So another aspect is that we, just by nature of doing this work, we're seeking answers. We're trying to find deeper meanings, hidden meanings, discover ourselves, the universe, or all of those kind of things. And this can not only take a lot of time, but it can take a lot of processing as well. And one thing with the modern world, particularly in the last few years, what I call the TikTok generation, things are just fast, constant. You need to do this, you need to do this. Everything that fulfills you has to be immediate and quick. magic takes patience and discipline. And witch talkers, as they call themselves, it doesn't really match with the reality of magic, which is patience, discipline, discernment, intuition, all of these things that 15-second videos of, you know, people screaming into a camera doesn't really match with magic. There are some good aspects to social media, some very good aspects. I'm technically using it right now to communicate with you in this way, so it's not by nature a bad thing, it's just how it's done. And I think people just instantly want things, or even worse than that, people instantly believe what they see. And I've seen this recently with, currently as I'm recording this, there's the whole drones issue going on in New Jersey, and I don't know what the outcome of that's going to be. I'm not even going to comment on what I think's going on there. But I have seen some of the most ridiculous, stupid, obviously fake videos that anyone with an IQ over 15 would be able to immediately work out that this is fake. And yet you look at the comments and people are like, oh my God, why didn't I see this enormous mothership over the White House? Why aren't the news reporting it? Because you're watching a really bad quality CGI video. My point is that people are losing the ability to think with discernment and critical thinking. Magic really, really requires that. So you have this almost duality going on at the moment of nonsense and really good practice. And you know, one benefit of this era is that we can connect with anybody on the planet about anything at any time, and that's amazing. But the downside to it is that there are a lot of very stupid people out there, and a lot of very gullible people out there, and a lot of not very nice people out there as well. So society is basically now formed into this way of telling us that we have to constantly achieve. We have to constantly achieve. If you're not, in magical terms, doing a big ritual and contacting 10 deities a day and being the most powerful witch in the world, then you're not a proper witch, or you're not a proper ceremonial magician. That's bullshit. Ignore that. It's an individual practice that you go at your pace. How I've learnt my way, as far as I've got through this practice, is completely individual to me. It's faster than some people, it's much slower than some people. I'm better in some areas in this aspect and really not good in this aspect. It's an individual process. Don't compare yourself to anyone else. Don't listen to these people online that tell you that you should never miss a new moon and you should never not do a ritual on a new moon. You're not a proper practitioner if you miss it once. Ignore that. These people are idiots and they're manipulative. Go at your own pace. Go with what you want to do, how you want to do it, and then take that time to process and understand what you've achieved, what you've learnt. Now, one other aspect that I think is very important to bring up is that magic can be a very, very painful process for a lot of people, particularly when you start to go very deeply into this practice, and particularly if you're doing a lot of shadow work or working on the clip off or anything like that that requires you to really go inwards. This can be a very, very painful and difficult experience. And this is where burnout can really take its toll, and you do need to be aware of this and be very careful. Take things slower. Take things slower than what you maybe want to, but do it safely and do it in a very disciplined and committed way. Think of it almost like going to the gym. If you overdo it, you cause injuries, you maybe lose interest, you don't want to go back because it's too hard. Whereas if you do 20 minutes a day, 6 days a week, it's much easier to do that than doing 3 hours once a week, where you're just going to completely destroy your body and your mind doing that kind of thing. Maintaining is much easier than rebuilding. But in regards to how this can be a painful process for some, well, if you've come from a very strict religious background, stripping away that religious dogma, those religious beliefs that have been put upon you as a child, can be very challenging and very difficult. And particularly if you're still within that religious environment, but you now want to take a different path, there can be a lot of almost dangerous restrictions with that, particularly in certain cultures and countries. That can be very, very dangerous to do. And with the deeper shadow work, you can also, to make progress, you often have to address things like unresolved trauma, unresolved issues. It can be even abuse and very, very difficult things like that. Now, I will also say that magic is never, ever a replacement for medical support and medical treatment. It can work well alongside it, but if you are struggling with any issues like this, get medical support immediately. You need it. Magic will not and should not be used to supersede true medical assistance. So what to do if you're experiencing a burnout? Well, first things first is take a step back. Really start to look after yourself. This can be spending more time in nature, more connected to nature often works for me. You can maybe stop the magic work and just do things like concentrate on cleansing, whether that's cleansing baths, cleansing rituals. You can even incorporate things that you do every day, like making a cup of tea or making a meal. You can really connect with what you're doing and use that as a cleansing ritual. For me, one of the biggest aspects that I try and do every single day that keeps me grounded and kind of helped me with not going through these burnouts again is exercise. For me, even if it is 20 minutes a day or even 10 minutes a day, it's better than nothing. And something physical for me really works, where I can concentrate just on the act. So for me, boxing or similar kind of martial arts have really, really helped me with just that dedication and focus on my own body. Now, cleansing your altar. This is a very important thing to do if you've got an altar or some kind of altar space that you're using. Cleanse it. Completely polish it, take off anything that isn't being used, maybe rearrange it, move it into a different place. Things can get very stagnant in magic, and if you're just doing the same thing over and over again, you need to switch it up, and this is where burnout can happen as well. Throw away anything that is old or not being used, whether that is things like witch bottles or jars that you're using. If they're just lying around, they're still draining that energy. Get rid of them. Sigils, and I've learnt this the hard way, don't draw out sigils and leave them lying around because you don't want to let go of them yet. You haven't used them yet. Just use them in the moment. Having, sigils drawn out with intent. And to my horror, I'd put a lot of them in an old book, and I must have had about 35 sigils in various sizes just drawn out, some of them from years ago. And suddenly I understood why the room that I was working in had started to feel so draining. It had just built up and built up. Get rid of them, dispose of them, make things fresh. Do this regularly. Just clean things down, change your practices, change your routine. Just try and keep things as fresh and as energetically flowing as possible. I've touched on this a little bit, but I think it needs saying directly. Digital detox. Get off social media. Be aware of what content you're consuming. almost look at it as food. What you are consuming will dictate your mindset. There is so much negativity, and how these algorithms pretty much across the board work is, if you are outraged, angered, disgusted, any kind of negative emotion attached to it, it gets more views, it gets more likes, which then makes it come up in your feed even more. A lot of practitioners have worked out that if they are threatening to curse the world, that they are the most dangerous witch on the planet, and they will curse you, curse your bloodline if you don't do this, if you disagree with them. They will kill you, they will destroy your life. Now, this is all nonsense, and any practitioner, particularly if you're claiming to work within demonology, that is threatening people online, is not just an idiot, they're a dangerous idiot. And they will, at some point, this will hit them, the level of stupidity of what they're doing. But I see it very often. People then get engaged with it, people start to copy it, people start to be fearful of it, but still engage with it more. Just be really, really careful of who you're interacting with, who you're following, what you are consuming. And try and do little things like go for a walk for a couple of hours. Don't take your phone. Nothing bad is going to happen. You don't need to be constantly attached to your phone, walking down the street looking at your phone. Keep it in your pocket. You're walking down the street, going into a shop to look at things, and I see it all the time. It drives me insane. People aren't engaging with reality. They aren't engaging with themselves or the present moment. Get off your fucking phone, please. Doing little things like reading a book at night and trying to get into that routine instead of, again, looking at your phone will help as well. It will just help calm you down, keep you grounded, keep you centered. And it takes your mind away from magic. It takes your mind away from these big, huge, sometimes overbearing ideas and thoughts and practices. Just keep things simple. Read a good book. Put the book down, go to sleep. Only work on what you want to work on as well. So don't be influenced by what other people are telling you that you have to do, what you should be doing. People make, and myself included, recommendations. They share their experience. You should try this approach. This is what worked for me, etc. But when someone tells you that you have to do things like this, you have to do this, you have to do big rituals every day, you have to work with Lilith every single day. No, you don't. It's your path, it's your journey. I share my experiences. It may work for you, it may not. Another thing is to give up trying to manifest constantly, doing spell work and ritual work constantly, trying to get things to manifest. I think sometimes taking a step back and instead of trying to push things to manifest for you, just be in a mode of receiving. See what happens when you try that, and from my experience it often works better, and it just takes that pressure off you. You're in that energetic flow instead of desperately trying to grab. And remembering why you started doing this. Why did you actually start taking this journey? What was that small goal, or what was that spark of interest that happened? Remembering the smaller things will often help you just stay on target of what you actually want to achieve. Now, one of the very important things to mention that I have got better at, but I still do forget sometimes, is close your circle. Close it. If you're not closing your circle, you're literally leaving whatever energy you're working with or type of ritual that you're doing, you're leaving that open. It will drain you, even if it's a positive working that you're doing. It will drain and pull that energy from you. So just get into the habit of making sure that you close down the circle and that you return the space that you've worked in to a more balanced and livable place. And lastly, remember that all things pass. This burnout will pass. This is a temporary state, and we're always in a constant temporary state. Things are always moving, whether it's a really good time, whether it's a really bad time, whether you're bored, whether you're lost. All of these periods are constantly evolving and moving. That's what life is. Nothing is permanent. So just remember that. If you're really struggling with a burnout, it will pass. So thank you for watching, and I hope that this was helpful. I've really struggled with these periods, so I think this is a subject that isn't really addressed enough, considering that everybody seems to go through this. But thank you again for watching, and the usual, please like, please subscribe if you find my content useful.